Welcome to Season 4, Episode 8 of At Home, the podcast. There are only 3 of us sitting around the table today, Angie Brenneman, Dustin Eby, and myself, Brant Nine. Pastor Chris Knight has a number of meetings over the next couple of weeks, so in his absence, we'll continue to press on. Our topic today really surrounds the idea of embracing the future, the power of leaving the past behind. We are calling this episode Windshields and Rearview Mirrors. And Angie, actually, we got to do a camp this summer together, teen camp, a prayer camp here in Goshen. Is that where it's considered? Yeah, Goshen. And you taught on this topic for one of our TOG times.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea here is, if you've listened to our previous episode, we're going to kind of hit 3 big start of the new year episodes that kind of go into how do we walk into 24 with a new perspective. And so with that, we are kind of looking at the journey that we're on. Life's a journey, right? Mm-hmm. And so we went, and last week we talked about drivers and passengers. And so we talked a little bit about what that means and what that looks like. So this week it's windshield and rear view mirrors. So it still relates to the driving, concept.
The car analogies.
Yes, but I think even as Dustin sits around here, this has been around for a little while, Habitudes, right, Dustin? How long ago were you introduced to Habitudes?
It has, yeah. Middle school is when we went through it. We went through the book, and I remember the pictures well. Yeah, I really enjoyed going through the books and learning about leadership just through images. That really spoke to me, and that was a way that I was able to learn, being a visual learner for sure.
So it is a little exciting because it has been updated. And if you are a listener and you have the Right Now Media app, you can just put in your Right Now Media the word Habitude, and you will see all about 11 books that are on different types of habitudes. So this one that's covering is the first one in Habitudes for the Journey, which is windshield and rearview mirror. So it's pretty much what it means is looking ahead instead of gazing and, staying in the past. We need to gaze at the past. We need to use the past as a reference, but it isn't what drives us forward.
Right. So we look at the past as something that often acts as a shadow. It influences our present actions and it shapes our future. So we're going to start by just posing a simple question, and that is, how has your past shaped who you are today?
So Dustin, past. We talked about it last week. You had a birthday the last podcast.
I did. I'm feeling it too. Feeling it. Stairs have become a new challenge in my life.
Yeah.
My exercise has become getting up and sitting down. That's my one sit-up a day I do. So, right. No, really for me, I would say that my past is interesting because the way that I kind of ended up, especially just in this seat today, I grew up, having great Christian parents, grew up in the church, always going to church and getting involved in youth group at, 14, 15, and then really kind of just falling in love with this idea that this could be something that I actually got to do for a job, which was something that I never really thought of before, but then ended up going to school for youth ministry and then starting out, in ministry as a youth pastor. And that was something that I enjoyed, for a number of years, and that was great. And I learned, I think, through youth ministry, some of my greatest passions, some of my giftings, some of the areas definitely where I am maybe not as gifted as I thought that I was, but really just this love for people and this love for stories and this love for seeing people find their spot and finding where they belong inside the church, the body of believers. And that's kind of what I get to do here at Waukee, and that's what I really, really enjoy. And so that's kind of what's helped bring me here.
Well, when I think of past, I just have a few more years. The stairs do hurt. My knees hurt sometimes too, like you say, Dustin. So
not when you play pickleball.
That's right. Pickleball athletics. Well, yeah. And athletics has always been a part of my life. So I continue to think about how that impacts me today and how I'm a mother of kids who are athletes. And so the girls and I have a pretty cool bond together. And so that's really been one of my biggest probably parenting impacts, is the past has impacted how I parent the girls with my coaching and my, participating as an athlete, but also knowing that I'm never going to tell them what to do in the water. That's their coach's job because I've been in that position. Yeah. And so there's just a really happy medium there that I think as a family, we've really been able to achieve. But I would have to say the word that comes to mind most besides that in past is the word seasons. And I say this word because I think oftentimes we get going on this, what we call the road of life, and we're looking through this, future and what's ahead. And then, we're glancing at, we got to do that. That was a pretty awesome. And then all of a sudden you realize that this season doesn't look like the last season that you were in. And I say this is that, yes, it ties to athletics. We run seasons because even your team, transpires, and different players in the game when your coach comes and makes each season different and has, different opportunities there. But I think in life, for me, I think what has impacted me most in learning to adapt to seasons is that you start a new scorecard each season. Yeah. Like holding on to what you did in the past doesn't necessarily apply to what you're given today. Yeah. And so what doesn't even matter with like not only in job, but parenting, in relationships, and all of those things, that sometimes we are our hardest critics. And I have to learn in the season that I'm in. I can bring things in from the past season that I've learned, but I also have to give myself a little bit of grace to say, okay, let's start a new scorecard. Yeah. I maybe have to learn this in this season. Yeah. I may have to be adaptive in this, and I may have to forgive this and give a little grace here. And hey, maybe I can use this part. Yeah. And so I say that that's probably one of the biggest things is that it makes you adapt, learn, and appreciate the seasons in life.
Yeah, that's good. That's good perspective. Yeah, speaking of adaptability, that's kind of become my word for life. So as a kid, we moved over 10 times between the ages of 3 to 18. My parents were divorced when I was in early elementary. Obviously had to adapt not only to our settings, but just different lifestyle. I yearned for mentors and teachers, and I had many, and I adapted to their teachings and their leadings. And then I became a mentor and a teacher and had to learn how to do that well. And ultimately, I feel like I've become a lifelong learner who loves to solve problems and collaborate with others. And so I feel like my personality and what I do in ministry and who I am as a husband and as a father all kind of goes back to that word of adaptability, and I think that's a positive thing. I really do. So looking at rearview mirrors and thinking about that, and Angie alluded to some of this already. Rearview mirrors are good to glance at, but not to gaze at. What does that mean to you?
I don't know, Dustin. Do you ever feel like sometimes you like to look back and you like to say, oh, that was awesome? Like when you were in high school and you were, playing a sport and you're like, do you remember that moment in time?
Right. The good ones were very few of me in athletics. But yes, there were a few moments for sure, like looking back where it is like, man, what a time to be alive. Like those were really, really fun. And I mean, I know some people, high school, middle school, those were not fun memories, but for me, I loved it. I mean, I had a great group of friends that I got to be around, and just, a lot of cool things to be able to look back on and be like, man, I definitely miss some of that stuff, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes, like this past weekend, Grace drove home on Saturday afternoon, and Katie was here and Cole was here, and it was snowing and it was cold, so we all had dinner together. And one of our favorite things is when we sit around the dinner table and start sharing stories of childhood memories, of the kids, and most of it's me and Dan's mistakes that they like to talk about. But I say this is that the rearview mirrors teach us a lot about what has happened, and then all of a sudden you realize, like, I made a mistake there, and I could have changed and I could have done better. And so I just say that because sometimes rearview mirrors to me means that helps me learn, so I know where not to go. Yeah. Like what mistakes I've made, but also I can look at it and I can see blessings in it. And say, that's awesome. That really helped me learn this, or it really helped me go this direction instead of the other direction. And so the last one I was going to point out is sometimes when we look at rearview mirrors and think back to our past, is sometimes we can get a little cynical, a little, I don't know, what's the word, judgmental.
Sure.
Instead of looking forward to seeing what's ahead, and holding on to positivity and, hope, because you sometimes when we get stuck in the past, we do get, it's like it takes us down. You ever feel that where you're sitting there like, oh,
it's not living water. Yeah.
It's not going to get better.
Yeah.
But yet when you look forward and you're like, it can get better. That's what hope is. It's something that's bigger than yourself, that's out in front of you. And so I think sometimes we need to get ourselves looking forward instead of sitting in that.
Yeah. Agree. I think a big part of it too, though, is this wasn't that long ago, we're big into the Disney movie game right now with our kiddos being 3, 5, and 8. But Lion King was on, and I think a very underrated quote in that movie is by the monkey Rafiki.
Yes.
When he's talking about your past, he says you can either run from it or you can learn from it. And so I think it is good to not be gazing in our past and just be living there when we do have a future ahead of us. But I think it is important that if we're not learning from our past, like the good and the bad, then I think that's going to, I don't know, I think that's just as hurtful as anything else. So I think it's important to remember and to learn and to grow in those areas that we know that we can grow in.
Brant, would you say this kind of ties to the whole idea of dreams and memories?
Yeah. Tim Elmore actually has a quote, and it says, "When our dreams are bigger than our memories, we gain energy from the hope that lies ahead." And there's so much wisdom in that, right? When we're gazing at, where God wants us to go and the things that we have set before us, instead of gazing behind us and trying to hold on to those things, he can use us in mighty ways. One thing I was going to say real quick, Dustin, you mentioned Rafiki. When I was teaching, one quote I would always use with my students is, I had a stick I would carry around, and I would pretend like, hey, if you disobey me, the stick could be used, and obviously it was a joke. The parents knew about it. They thought it was hilarious too. Anyway, it was a yardstick, and I'd always reference when Rafiki would hit Simba over the head, and Simba would go, "Ow, that hurt." And he goes, "Oh no." He goes, "What'd you do that for?" And he goes, "It doesn't matter. It's in the past." And he goes, "Well, it hurt." And Rafiki goes, "Ah, yes, the past does hurt." And so that brought back a memory. And actually, I wrote some things down, but actually my review.
Spot on voice, by the way.
Yeah, I practice in the mirror. Yeah. But actually, my review mirror right now is teaching. And I did it for almost a decade. Coaching, about knocked my headphones off there. Coaching, did that for about a decade too. Angie can relate to that. Like, there's so much about that season of life that I want to hang on to. I want to hang on to the kids and inspiring them and singing with them and motivating them. I want to hang on to coaching successful teams, whether we win on the court or we don't, but at the end of the year, knowing it was a successful season. I want to hang on to those things. But at the end of the day, as Francie and I prayerfully considered where God wanted us to go, that did need to be a review mirror as we headed towards the windshield, right? So,
but I think, I'm going to take this just one step further, is that I think we hold on to those things because in our society, it's a little scary to dream. Like, I'm not sure. Like your kids play imagination games, right? They dream.
Sure.
Do they dress up? Do
they?
Yeah, and they play like they're like superheroes or a Cinderella. I mean, I can't imagine
so many swords.
But that's kind of like a safe way. But what about to dream for things that take a lot of work and a lot of anticipation and a lot of I don't even know if I'm going to get there. Like, I don't think we teach ourselves well how to dream because I think that part there brings into perspective what the steps have to happen to get to that dream.
Right.
And so we sit back and we can talk about memories all day long because they're fun and they're like something we've experienced and we have emotions tied to it. Dreams bring a little bit of hesitancy, a little bit of fear because I'm not sure I could actually get to that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be really honest. This is probably season that I'm in right now with Grace. Hey, I don't know if many of you guys listened to one of our other episodes, but she was here and she's swimming and she has 5 months to achieve a dream. And that dream is to make it to Olympic trials. That's a pretty, I
got her autograph. That's my dream too.
You're ahead of the game.
But
Yeah,
so I
it's a
say
big
this,
dream.
it's a huge dream. It's so big that sometimes I'm like, what if she doesn't get it? As a parent, I'm like, I'm in this like catch-22. Do I tell her hey, it's really okay if you don't get it.
Yeah.
But as a parent, I want to be like, no, I 100% believe that you can do this. And I'm trying to do everything possible to give her the foundation, I guess you could say, in my words and my prayers and my hope for what she can do. And it's the same with Katie. Do I stop her from dreaming to go to, wherever she wants to go to college and swim? No, I think we have to teach, Cole, I have to teach him how to dream, how to build something that can actually go and make progress and do something that's bigger than him, and I think we hold back because it's scary.
Yeah.
It's so scary to let our kids dream because they could fail.
Yeah. An innovative mindset is scary. Doing something against the grain or that's not normal or not common for, in Grace and Katie's situation, or with Cole, what's the next generation of the farm look like?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. 100%.
It's the fear of failure, but it's the fear of the unknown too, I think, which causes a lot of fears. Like we don't know what lies ahead. We think we do. We can plan for it. We can try to have everything charted out the way that we think that it all should go. But then one thing changes the whole course of, where we're going. And that is scary, And so I think a lot of people are afraid to dream because they can't guarantee what the future is going to hold. And they just, the unknown is a scary thing for some people.
Well, I do think this ties to our Christian walk a little bit, even too, in that we can't even understand eternity. We can't, there's no way that, eternity can be grasped by us as human beings, but it goes with the process of trusting who has redeemed our eternity and going forward. And so he gives us steps, just like we can have steps in our, life to make those dreams happen. God gives us steps to see what the end goal is, and that it is bigger than what we can understand. It is a little scary, it's a little unknown, but that all ties to, what ways can we take these dreams, these memories, and pull them together, Brant?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to segue to this next part. Maybe that's what you were alluding to, Angie. But carrying past mistakes, regrets, or failures can weigh heavy on our shoulders, hindering our spiritual growth. And so the question I have here is, are there settings or circumstances that cause you to wallow in your past? And Angie, you had something you wanted to add on there too.
Well, I do think that it's people as well. It's not just settings and circumstances, but people sometimes hold us back. Would you agree, Dustin?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's true. I mean, I don't know how I was going to try to get this story in somewhere, and I think this is probably the best place to put it. But yeah, when thinking about just this idea of carrying past mistakes or regrets or failures, not necessarily your own, but maybe even of those that I met a guy when I was on a mission trip in Africa who had just had a horrible experience as a part of the Rwandan genocide. He lost his entire family, and now he is there and he is giving tours of the place where his whole family was killed. And I remember having a conversation with him, and obviously through a translator, asking him why you would want to be at the place where you saw like your family killed. That just didn't make any sense to me. And he said, we all, because he showed me the scars on his arms, and he said, we can look at our scars one of two ways. We can look at our scars as a time that we've been hurt or a time that we've been healed. And I believe that now that I've been healed, and I use this to help other people. And so that was just one of the most powerful things that anybody's ever said to me directly about moving on and to a perspective, truly choosing to have a different perspective from past to future.
Mm-hmm. So one of the words when you asked this question, Brant, that came to me is the word renew. And throughout the New Testament, how many times do we hear the name, what Paul calls renewing our minds? Because I think letting go of something means you have to replace it with something new. And so renew is about the best word I could think of.
Yeah. I was thinking about people, as you mentioned that. People in certain settings in our community cause me to just stare at the rearview mirror and think, what in the world was I thinking? Or how could I have acted that way? Or how could I have done those things? And I sit in that rearview mirror and I think about those things, and then the lies from Satan come, right? You don't deserve to be doing this. You don't deserve to experience any success because you were this kind of person before. but the renewing of my mind happened. And now I can't even imagine thinking or doing the things that I had done in the past. And God has continued to just renew me over and over and over again as I have stood at his feet, knelt at his feet, and looked at the direction and sought his will for my life.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so important to do that on a daily. And that's why we're saying, like, this isn't just looking at the past, and it's not just looking at the future. This is a daily journey. So you're in the car, you're not, you're kind of having this tension. We kind of talked about this tension that has to exist between the past and the future. Well, that tension actually exists in today.
Right.
And how you frame your mindset, how you frame your actions, how you frame your relationships.
Right.
What do you think about that, Dustin?
I mean, if we live in the past, and I was just, as you were talking, I was literally thinking about being in the car and the times that I do look in the rearview mirror. And it is usually when, if I'm being completely honest, it's when I know that I did something wrong. So
Is that guy following me?
Right. Well,
Right.
if I cut somebody off on it, not necessarily intentionally or maybe intentionally, but I get in front of a guy maybe that's a little too close, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, shoot. And so I'm looking back to make sure that he's not speeding up, or I'm looking back to make sure that he's not upset or whatever, and it's very easy to let that take my focus off what I should be focused on, and that's what's ahead. So we've hit on it a bunch, but I think the idea of just being so concerned, and the word that I think of too is not just concerned, but consumed. It really can consume us. And if we allow what happened in the past to consume us, I truly believe that it hinders what God has for us in the future, because we wrestle with this tension and this idea of like, I just want to know, like, I want to know what the end result of my life will look like. But so much of the journey really is the journey. It's not necessarily always about what's going to happen at the very end. It's like, how is God continuing to use each moment, each story, each experience to shape me to who he wants me to be?
Preach it. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. But I think it's too is not only I would say I agree with you, looking in the rearview mirror and your heart rate just like skyrockets. I live across the road from the jail, but they know my car now. So sometimes I have to just be like, okay, just breathe.
And when you say they, you don't mean the inmates. You're talking about the police officers.
I'm talking about the police officers know my car. I know everywhere that they set, where they are waiting for us to, just do something wrong.
Right.
But when I say this, is that how you respond to failure, how you respond to what you did wrong, because usually, you do have to admit that what you just did, which is in the past, just like you said, Rafiki said, well, that's in the past, it hurt.
Doesn't matter. It's in the past. Yeah.
But still, I think failure has to be a good teacher. It has to be, because if you don't learn from those mistakes, and if you don't change, I guess that's the other side of it, is if you don't change what you're doing,
right,
you're going to fail again.
Yeah. It kind of goes along with the whole Lion King analogy, right? Because Simba did have to realize that he ran away from what he thought his past was, even though it was manipulated to make him think he did something wrong. And he had to change. He had to change his course and his direction and fight for what he stood for. But
don't you think though, and I just want to throw this, don't you think that's actually what discipleship is all about? Mm-hmm. It's like learning how to change from your mistake, because we are sinners in need of a savior. And I just say this, and I throw this out, is that discipleship is learning and being more self-aware and learning how to hold on to what God's called us to be and do, but yet looking at what we've made, a mistake of, or what we've done in our sin, and admitting it.
Yeah. Right.
And then changing our course.
Right. Yeah. And it's not learning isn't a single lesson. Learning is a lifetime. And so I think as long as we continue just to understand that, and maybe this is what we're going to be getting into in a second, but we can have an initial reaction to something, but that doesn't have to be how we eventually choose to respond to something. So if we do make a mistake and we try to improve or whatever, get out of that situation and we make it again, some of us, I know from my own experience, I get so frustrated in myself because I'm like, I can't do this because I keep making the same mistake over and over and over. But the more you go through life and the more you experience and that you invite people in for accountability, the more that it's like, no, I really can choose to do these things differently. Like the way that I initially reacted does not have to be how I'm choosing to respond.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next question, we've already kind of said that we've made some failures in life, and I don't know if we want to talk specifically about those failures or not, but the question is, how do you naturally respond to adversity or past failures? I guess I can start that one by saying I resort to the Adam approach my default is to want to hide. And maybe not physically, maybe it's just ignore the problem and it'll go away. But that is my default that I have to intentionally ask Jesus to forgive me for, and meet face to face with on a daily basis, because I fall short on a daily basis in so many areas. And the easy thing for me to do is to not address it, to not acknowledge it, and to hide. And I will say this, if you're married, that is very hard to do. Because when you, especially as the man of the house, when you ignore your shortcoming with your wife or with your kids, your wife tends to let you know that you need to fix this and you need to address this, and that is why she is the perfect ally, right? That is why she is your partner, to sharpen you in that area. And so, anyway, that is my default. But I think acknowledging, or at least knowing that is something that I struggle with, being aware of it has allowed me to pray through it in so many ways.
I think this is kind of almost where people, and I want to say, get stuck in a pothole, get derailed, get off course, is failure. Yeah. Because if you don't face your failures and you admit to your failures, you often become a victim mentality, or you blame somebody else. And when you get in this, it is just a downward spiral that doesn't go anywhere, and it doesn't lead to hope and dreams and progress. It actually takes you and buries you right where you're at. And so then all of a sudden you're looking forward, and you're like, I don't have hope. I've been victimized, or I've been, it's this person's fault. And so when I say this is that for me, for a lot of years, I dealt with a lot of blame, I guess you could say, to Dan. I'm going to be really honest, and I can say this, is I never, ever intended to be a farm wife, ever. Listener, if, a lot of people look at farm life and they go, that's not for me. Yeah. I was probably there, 25 years ago. Yeah. And so with that, God did a work on me because of something that, God called us to as a family, but I became in my mind kind of a victim of my husband's job. Like, oh wait, he's never home. He's, you know what I mean? I'm the one doing all the work, or I'm doing this. And I only say this is, I'm going to quote Dan's words from when we first got married, and when I was really struggling with this, he's like, God's going to work on you until you get it right. And that's really what it's going to happen, until your heart change. It wasn't Dan's fault. It wasn't what was somebody else's reason of doing something, wrong. It was actually me and my own heart. And I say this is that sometimes the work that has to happen is in me, so that I don't become this person that blames somebody else or a victim of somebody else's decision. It's me. I can only change me. Right. And so, and I think you have alluded to this many a times when some of the stuff that we've talked about is we have to stay in our lane. We can't look to somebody else. We can't look to see what they're doing. We have to stay in our lane, and we have to drive forward and look forward to know that it's me that has to change. Yeah. It's me.
Yeah, that's really good. I would say for myself, my natural tendency, as sinful as it may be, is to be kind of what you were just talking about at the end, the blame shifter, the excuse maker. That's what I am really good at sometimes when I'm caught with dealing with my own mistakes face to face. And I heard a guy one time talking about, past mistakes or whatever, and he said, we can rent our mistakes or we can own our mistakes. He's like, because when you're a renter, it's a lot easier just to not care about it as much, not deal with it, because it's not mine. It's somebody else's problem to deal with. But when we own it officially and we confront it head on as our own, that we were the ones that got ourselves in this mess, and that we have to do whatever it takes to get ourselves out, that is when change is made, and transformation happens, when God works in us, but we are dealing with these things and owning them.
Let's move on. Having a vision for the future provides direction and purpose, guiding your actions in the present. So let me ask you this as we begin to wrap up here. Have you set any goals for 2024? Personally, job-related, ministry? Have you set any goals?
Well, yes. So these guys are laughing because Dustin, what's one of your goals? You want to share your goals first before I share mine?
It's so funny because I am not normally a resolution maker, goal setter, but this year is the year. We're doing it. Year. Making some goals.
It's such a big goal too, Dustin. I'm
look,
so proud of you.
I know they're making fun of me, and I don't care. I'm not a reader, and so one of my goals was to read 6 books. Not listen to 6 books on audio, not listen to them at speed ×2 on my phone, but actually flip pages cover to cover, 6 books that I can get through. That's a book every 2 months. I think it's doable. For somebody who I don't think, read a full book last year, I can do it. So that's one of my goals. Yeah. 6 books.
You can.
I'm almost through one. So
you can do it. Yeah.
And Angie's going to read 100.
No,
she is, and that's fine.
But I also have a different style. Sometimes I don't always read all the words. I'm going to be honest.
You're
with
a speed reader.
Yeah. I learned that when I was doing my master's because I had to read so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to be totally honest, and I think listeners, we can all relate to this. I want to open my phone and not touch my social media.
Really?
That's like one of the things that I want to be really present in my moments. And the funny thing is, just the other day, my kids, it was our conversation on Saturday night around the table. Mom, I tried to call you like 3 times and you didn't answer your phone. What happens if one of us has an emergency and you don't answer your phone? And I'm just like, but we're so attached to our phones. And I when I say this is that, like in the morning when I have coffee, sometimes the phone's the easiest in the dark to open.
Yeah.
But one of the habits I want to create is not to open those apps, to open my Bible app. And listeners, there's some great stuff that's happening in the Bible app and cultivating rhythms and Bible study and those kind of things. And you can do that without having to turn, like I'm kind of like, don't want to turn the light on until I'm really like awake with my first cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So I really tried to find some good devotions and things inside of that. And Dan and I even do a couple together. But I say that's just a plain discipline.
Yeah. Yep. One of my goals is to just be present, to be where my feet are, and not just in my life here in ministry, but to be present with my kids and my wife. And then another goal that Francie and I have kind of set together is that we just want to pray aloud together more often. We've had seasons where we do this really well, and then there's seasons when the boys go down late and we just want to, I don't know, self-indulge in entertainment of any kind. Mario Kart as of late. She's really good at it. She beats me all the time. Or they wake up too early and it's like, we missed our opportunity there. And so we just want to make sure that it's a spiritual discipline that we pray aloud together more often in 2024. So let me ask you this, because we talk about goals, but there's also progress that should happen when you set goals, right? So when it comes to acknowledging and celebrating the progress you make on your journey, do you celebrate progress or do you only celebrate achievements? And in your mind, is there a difference? And this will be the last question we answer because we're about 3 minutes over right now.
Well, I want to say yes right away, because achievements and progress are 2 different things.
Yeah.
Because progress is actually change inside of you, inside of your perspective, inside of your mindset, where achievements kind of are like maybe, well, I did this, if you're on a weight loss journey, I lost this much weight.
Check.
Well, check. Yeah. But guess what? I ate ice cream last night. Yeah. So take off the check mark,
Minus.
Minus. And I only say that is that progress doesn't mean perfection.
Right.
And that's where I think those 2 words almost kind of, it derails the journey. You have to look at progress and not just achievements.
Yeah. We're going to have my friend on here the next episode of our podcast. His name's Jake Simons. A lot of you know him. And one thing that he and I loved to tell our students and the kids that we coach is we would start it by saying practice makes, and then all the kids would inevitably say perfect. And we would say, no, it doesn't. You can't achieve perfection. And so we would condition them, train them to have the mindset of practice makes permanent. And how when your routines and your habits become permanent, they're not always going to be perfect, but you're always striving for progress. Mm-hmm. So that's huge.
You're not getting tied to the past, but you're looking ahead and going towards the future and dreams.
Right.
Yep.
Angie, can you tell the listener where they can connect with us with At Home, the podcast?
Yes. So we thank you for sticking with us today, and we thank you for being a part of our At Home, the podcast. And we believe that talking about these things give us opportunity to talk about them at home with your family, at home with your kids, your spouse, your friends, and even at work. And so as you talk and maybe as you think through, hey, I have a question about this, you can email us at home, which is home@walkiemc.org. You can email us. You can find us on the website at walkiemc.org on our At Home page, and you can message us through the website. You can also find us on Facebook and At Home the podcast with WalkieMC, and there's conversation that you can have there too. So let us know what you think. Give us a review even on how your listening platform, and let us know that you're out there. And we appreciate you and listeners being part of this. And hey guys, I think we did okay today.
We did okay. We do miss Chris Knight.
Miss him.
He adds a nice voice to this podcast. But for the next couple of weeks, I'm sitting in the number one seat.
Yes.
QB1.
But like I said, we have a visitor next week. We're looking forward to that podcast, and we'll see you back here.
Yep. Hey, in the tapestry of life, the threads of the past are interwoven with the present and the future. While the past contributes to our identity, it should not overshadow the potential for growth and transformation in Christ. By consciously focusing on what lies ahead, releasing the burdens of the past, and embracing the opportunities of the future, we allow God to create a fulfilling and purposeful life journey. As you embark on this path, remember that the power to shape your destiny lies in your hands, and it starts by acknowledging where you're at and fixing your gaze on what's ahead.